So what did Skyrim Special Edition get right? A lot of people do shit on Skyrim Special Edition, saying it's just a cash grab and they just really want to make more money off of mods, and there's not really that much content here. Well, today's video, I'm going to disagree with some of those individuals and talk about 5 things that I think Skyrim Special Edition really added and improved over the old RIM, or basically just the old edition of Skyrim. A lot of these are some subtle changes that actually make a big difference in the grand scheme of things, and just some different things I've noticed while playing the game that I felt like really were a big improvement. Now, with all that being said, I don't necessarily think it's a perfect game, and tomorrow I will have a video talking about 5 things I really don't like about Skyrim Special Edition, but for the time being, it's going to be all positivity, and with that, let's just jump right into it. So the first major change I want to talk about is Skyrim Special Edition being 64-bit compared to the old RIM being just 32-bit. And in general, the new edition did get a lot of stability and just kind of game stability improvements overall, making it a much nicer platform for modding. So one of the major new features that came with 64-bit is the ability to actually have a lot more graphical mods. The old Skyrim being 32-bit meant it could only use up to 4 GB of RAM at any given time, and if you exceed that, it will just crash the game. So one major drawback of this was if you're using a lot of these different texture packs and just graphic overhaul mods, it would actually start to eat up a lot of your different RAM. One of the metrics I saw was that 500 megabytes of VRAM would consume 430 megabytes of physical RAM. Obviously, in addition to actually just running the base game, you could see how this could eat up your RAM very quickly and cause consistent crashes, which was a major problem in Skyrim. But even beyond that, there are a lot of other improvements. You could just have more NPCs active at once now. So previously, I think the limit was about 50, and if you had beyond 50 NPCs fighting at once, some of them would just stand there and do nothing. Well, now you don't have that problem anymore. You could just have massive battles. And even with that in mind, Skyrim just performs much better. So when you have a ton of NPCs on screen, even if it's not going to crash your game, you typically will just get better performance. For example, in old RIM, maybe you would have got 30 FPS with 50 NPCs on your screen. Now in Skyrim Special Edition, you'll get closer to 60 FPS with the same amount of NPCs battling it to the death. The next major improvement is going to be load times. This is going to be evident to, I think, anyone playing this game. Load times are a huge issue in some of the other Bethesda series games, especially when you start to stack on a bunch of different mods and really get your file size and game saves to be pretty large. Load times would get to the point where they are unbearable. Well, in Skyrim Special Edition, there seems to be a major improvement. Load times are reduced to even a matter of like 2 to 3 seconds, which is absolutely insane compared to prior when it would be like 10 to 15 seconds in some instances. Playing Skyrim Special Edition with these super short load times actually became such a luxury that I got very frustrated moving back to Fallout 4. As you guys know, a lot of my content on my channel is between those two games, and Fallout 4 just simply doesn't have as well optimized load times, so things like fast traveling yielded huge discrepancies in the amount of time it took, and honestly it became very frustrating to go back to some of those older games. I think it's a really underappreciated feature, which is understandable because a lot of people as playing it have begun to take it for granted, but if you ever do go back to one of the older games, you'll realize what a difference the load times actually make. So next up are visual changes. This is probably the most advertised feature of the new edition, and a lot of people didn't really like it at first, especially PC users coming off of an ENB. I definitely fell into that boat before the game released. I was like, oh, those visual changes don't look nearly as good as some of the ENBs out there. Regardless, after actually playing the game for a little bit, I started to realize with one good mod like Vivid Weathers or just some other mod that changed the lighting effects very slightly, I felt like the visuals of Skyrim Special Edition just by itself are noticeably better than that of Skyrim. In the old game, you definitely couldn't just play without an ENB after using an ENB. The visual difference was too massive and you just were like, oh, this game looks very ugly. Now with all that being said, I've yet to even install an ENB for Skyrim Special Edition simply because I don't mind the visuals, and I think Bethesda actually did a really good job. I think this especially applies to the different console users out there. Obviously they don't have the option of installing an ENB, so these visuals along with again one of those different weather mods do make a pretty substantial improvement over the previous game. It definitely doesn't make them as jealous as not having an ENB, considering so many users have abandoned the instability that comes along with some of the different ENBs. So one of the smaller features, but rain occlusion definitely had a pretty big impact on the game, especially the modded game of Skyrim Special Edition. So what rain occlusion basically means is that each raindrop is an individual object, and it's not going to just clip through a bunch of different roofs and different buildings. If you're standing under a tree or under an overpass, the rain won't go through that while it did in the previous Skyrim. So why do I say this is especially good for some mods out there? Well, mods like Frostfall do obviously take advantage of your character being wet or cold depending on some of the different environment and elements that that come along with the game. So previously, even if you were standing under a tree or some different kinds of shelter, you would still get the negative impacts of the weather simply because the game couldn't tell that you were actually standing under something. Well, now with these changes, it just makes those mods much more realistic and the game all that much more immersive. I think this is definitely a huge improvement. A lot of mods are taking advantage of this change already, and although it may be relatively simple, it just makes the game look a little bit nicer. Seeing the clipping through the old overhangs and different trees was just kind of ugly, and when you notice it, you're like, I wish that wasn't there. Fortunately, it is gone now, and I actually think that's one of the bigger improvements from the new edition. So last but not least, and I think the biggest change that did come with Skyrim Special Edition is the inclusion and successful release of console mods. I've made a whole standalone video talking about this subject simply because I think it's that big of a deal, but basically I think the successful release of console mods with almost corresponding with the release of Skyrim Special Edition, technically the mod tools did come out about a week later, but regardless, I think this really shows to other game companies and to Bethesda the power that console mods do possess. There have been quite literally millions upon millions of downloads for Xbox One and PS4 users for some of the different mods, as well as it basically sold the game. If you're a console user watching this, think about it. I just listed 4 of the best features of Skyrim. With all those features included and no mods, would you have actually bought Skyrim Special Edition for $60? Because I can't imagine many people would have. I think this is actually one of the reasons they gave it for free on PC. They really dodged a bullet there, because I imagine a lot of PC users would have been like, well, what am I actually paying for? Some slight visual improvements that mods could do already for free? And on top of that, they integrated a lot of the PC users into the new ecosystem, which allowed the PC users to create mods for the console users, and then the console users did buy more copies of the game, hence making Bethesda more money. All around, I think it was a very smart business decision. Again, I made a full video talking about this, but I think it basically kept everyone happy. Regardless, at the end of the day, I think the successful release of Skyrim Special Edition with console mods is going to be an icon to some other game industries, as well as really show Bethesda that future releases of Fallout 4 and Skyrim Special Edition should definitely be taking advantage of this fact, so that probably should mean more console mods in the future. And even beyond that, they did say they are working on 2 new IPs, so who knows, maybe in the future we'll even see some mods on consoles for some of these new games coming out from Bethesda. Regardless, that's pretty much going to wrap up my video, my 5 favorite features that were included with Skyrim Special Edition. I think a lot of these and all these together do make it a very good game, probably one of the best games to come out in a very long time, obviously building off a lot of the success of the original Skyrim though. With all that being said, it's not a perfect game, and tomorrow I'm going to talk about 5 things I really don't like about the game and that I just kind of thought it overlooked or lacked. Regardless, if you guys did watch to this point in the video, let me know in the comments down below. What do you think is one of the bigger changes or one of your favorite changes coming from this new edition? Whether it be something I listed in this video or something I forgot to talk about. Regardless, as always, I thank you guys for watching. I do hope you enjoyed again, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.